greatest evil we have seen. The greatest evil we have seen. So much so that I literally look at people side-eye when they say stuff like, "Oh, I think we think Israel does." No, Israel does not deserve the right to exist. This is why I'm a supporter of the one-state solution, one state where everyone have equal rights under the law, because under such a system, it will create the harmony between the Arabs, between Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people that existed in the Middle East for centuries. Remember, the anti-Semitism scourge started and escalated in Europe. Jews live safely in harmony with their Arab brothers and sisters across the Middle East. The anti-Semitism scourge was caused by white people, and they pushed it on, and they passed the blame onto Arabs, and they managed to trick the entirety of America, the UK, France, and others into thinking that Arabs are anti-Semitic when the height of anti-Semitism came from Europe and white people. So you can have a one-state solution which follows the guidelines, follow how Middle Easterns live forever. Because the idea that you can't do that because Jews wouldn't be safe is unfounded. Jews are unsafe in Europe. The Holocaust happened in Europe, not in Palestine. And now I'm going to show you guys a segment before our guest gets here that's going to get Ali Vecchi fired. I am convinced that this segment is about to get this man fired. I will watch this segment, my jaw on the floor, but not for the usual reason. Now, trust me, Ali, don't get me wrong. Ali Vecchi does a lot in this segment that annoys me. And I'm going to let you guys know what it is as we watch it. But this segment, I was utterly shocked to see on MSNBC. And this motherfucker may be fired, just like Mehdi Hassan for this. Where he brings on Lily Greenberg Hall. Remember, I covered Lily during my hotspot videos while explaining the Jewish, the first high-profile Jewish official resigned from the Biden administration. And she explained how the Biden administration didn't see Palestinians as people. She explained how the Biden administration was literally cooking the books. They was cooking the books in order to lie about Israel letting aid in. A scandal that just shook the foundations of our society. One of the greatest, most evil acts I've ever seen. Biden lying about UNRWA, Biden lying about aid getting in, and you have, it was so evil where Biden's own team is blowing the whistle on him. So I'm gonna let this video play. I'm gonna have a lot to say on this because Ali Vecchi brings on Lily Greenberg Hall, the person who's been blowing the whistle in the Biden administration. And once again, my jaw was on the floor listening to this. I would be surprised if he has a job in a month. Once again, he didn't. Not everything is gravy. Not everything is good. But it is still a damning segment for Biden and Israel and for the Democratic Party as a whole. So let's get into it.
Few international conflicts in recent memory have triggered social and political cleavages in American society, putting our liberal values and our capacity for tolerance to the test. These formative periods shaped their respective generations, giving rise to their own forms of McCarthyism, protest movements, and political dissent. Among them were the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the War on Terror, and now Gaza. This week, 2 more U.S. officials resigned over the Gaza war, accusing the Biden administration of not being transparent about the Israeli obstruction of humanitarian aid to the.
So Ali Vecchi had Trump derangement syndrome, and you're going to hear it throughout the course of this segment. But doesn't Biden cooking the books and lying about aid and starving children, as we have 3,500 children set to starve, isn't that one of the greatest scandals we've seen? Am I overreacting, fam? I'm asking you guys legit, for legit criticism. Am I overreacting when I say Biden cutting aid to UNRWA using torture-obtained confessions is one of the most evil things that someone in any administration has done in my lifetime? Biden cooking the books and lying, claiming that Israel is allowing aid to come in when it is not coming in, meaning the Biden administration teaming up with Israel and helping them starve Palestinian children. Am I being over dramatic when I say that's one of the most evil things I've ever heard in my life? And trust me, I heard a lot, my friends. Dying of starvation is literally one of the worst ways to die, and there are literally 3,500 Palestinian children that are set to meet that fate. I have literally seen babies that look like skeletons unwittingly on Twitter because the babies that died from malnutrition. This is what Jim Crow Joe is doing. But throughout the course of this segment, you're going to still see the Trump derangement syndrome out of Ali Veshi. These same people who will even speak about this will then say, oh, we still got to vote for Biden. Nothing Trump has done will ever touch this evil. Anyway, let's continue.
The more than 2 million starving Palestinians trapped inside the tiny strip. That brings the total number of American officials that have publicly resigned to 9, one of whom was a member of the U.S. Air Force who set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington as he shouted, "Free Palestine."
Bro,
according to one of
he's done. He's done, bro. I would be shocked if Ali Veshi has a job. This is the first time. You guys know I watch way too much corporate media because of what I do. I have literally never seen anyone in corporate media mention Aaron Bushnell. Like, there's a gag order in the media about this. This out all the countless segments I watch. This is the first time I've ever seen them mention the guy. And this is showing the fascism, the authoritarianism of the Biden administration, where you have not only your staff resigning, you got soldiers lighting themselves on fire. And despite what the Zionists said, they said, oh, people are going to forget about him. He was nationally honored in Yemen. He got streets named after him in the Arab War. No one forgot who this man was. You have soldiers that are lining themselves on fire, and despite that, Biden still won't change course. And do not forget, Aaron Bushnell did light himself on fire just because he was sad about Palestinians being murdered. He did this because the Biden administration ordered the Air Force to help with Israeli targeting. Aaron Bushnell was about to be sent to Israel to help assist the genocide. And that is what the Biden administration is forcing people in the Air Force and the military to do right now, to assist the genocide in Gaza. So he self-immolated because he refused to follow orders. He refused to follow the order to be complicit with genocide and decided to engage in mass disobedience in a extreme form of protest and self-immolation in order to raise awareness about what the criminals in our government is forcing United States soldiers to do. Because if Aaron Bushnell didn't do this, if he declined the orders, he would get dishonorably discharged, financially retaliated against, and ruined by the military-industrial complex for the rest of his life. And that if they don't Pat Tillman his ass. And well, let's continue. Like, this is shocking to see him mentioned on MSNBC. And it also shows that establishment didn't forget this guy, and they won't forget this guy. They just can't mention him. The legend of Aaron Bushnell, ladies and gentlemen.
Of humanitarian aid to the more than 2 million starving Palestinians trapped inside the tiny strip. That brings the total number of American officials that have publicly resigned to 9, one of whom was a member of the U.S. Air Force who set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington as he shouted, "Free Palestine." And according to one of our next guests, at least 24 more officials have left the Biden administration quietly. On Tuesday, Stacey Gilbert, a senior State Department official from the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, resigned in protest of a May report delivered to Congress that concluded that Israel is not blocking humanitarian aid deliveries to the Gaza Strip. I spoke with her on TV last night. She accused the Biden administration of twisting the facts for political reasons and said she is convinced that Israel is violating international humanitarian law. Gilbert is a 20-year veteran of the State Department. She resigned after concluding that it was futile to continue working on Gaza from within the government. Also resigning on Tuesday was Alexander Smith, a contractor for the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID for short. Smith stepped down after his internal presentation on maternal and child mortality among Palestinians was abruptly canceled. In the days before it was canceled, Smith was told to make several redactions, including removing a slide referring to international humanitarian law and deleting any language suggesting recognition of a Palestinian state.
Meanwhile, there are still morons that are pretending and saying stuff like, what can Biden do? Come on, man. Biden can't control Netanyahu. What can he do? What can the U.S. really do to stop Israel? Meanwhile, they are literally blocking reports that will show that Israel's committed a genocide. And I'm going to bring my guest, Dave, in here soon, and we're going to continue this segment. But the Biden administration keeps saying there's no evidence that Israel's committing a war crime. And then people in their own staff try to put a report together that shows evidence, and they get fired. Literally the most evil shit I've ever seen in administration. It's literally crazy. And liberals are still pretending that Biden has nothing to do with this. But we're going to continue this segment, but I want to take this time to introduce our guest, amazing journalist. You have amazing site at antiwar.com. I follow your work. A lot of great anti-imperialists reporting, exposing the lies of the U.S. empire. Thank you for joining us on RBN Live, Dave DeCamp.
Yeah, Nick, thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you. I'm a big fan of your work.
All right, I appreciate that. Same here. And I don't know how much of you was watching, but before we continue, because I would love to get your response. I'm running a little bit behind, but I think I would love to get your responses to this segment as well. But before we get started, I want to get your thoughts on what you've heard thus far, the Biden administration helping Israel block aid, and overall, just general, how the Biden administration have been complicit with Israel. Just to get started as we continue the segment. Once again, thank you for joining us again, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, the clip, I saw the part of it there about, they have the State Department recently put out this report that claimed Israel wasn't blocking aid and wasn't violating international law, or actually what it said, which is even worse, is that Israel is probably violating international law, but we can't, we don't have the proof. So I guess we could just keep sending them weapons. They needed that report to continue selling them, giving them weapons and bombs and stuff to continue to drop on Gaza. And we've seen this internal dissent, especially from within USAID, because they know, there's been leaks that they know for a fact that Israel is blocking aid shipments. There's no disputing that, especially since they captured the Rafah border crossing on May 7th. And that was an operation that Biden gave Netanyahu the green light for. Since then, barely any aid has been entering Gaza. And also, you look at what the U.S. has been doing. How can they claim Israel's not blocking aid when they had to build a pier, supposedly, to bring more aid in off the coast of Gaza? It's been a complete disaster, and they're dropping aid from the sky, which is killing people, which is some like 21 Palestinians have been killed during those airdrops. Either they were actually hit by the pallet or they drowned while trying to swim to get it. I mean, this is like you can't imagine like a dystopian, like science fiction story about something so horrific, like this big empire doing all these things, and the aid drops kill the people that they're supposedly trying to help. But anyway, so just on the face of it, we know that they're lying, and it's become very obvious now that you've had all these officials resigning and say that they are lying. And even Samantha Power, who runs USAID, has said that she's basically said that Israel is the chief impediment to aid entering Gaza, which of course is very obvious to anybody who's been paying attention. But she's, the top, that's a high level position that she has. And she's supposedly an expert on genocide, yet she remains part of this administration that's supporting one.
And now you have Israel that is planning to put UNRWA and designate them as a terrorist organization. I was reading about this earlier today and getting mass condemnation about the international community, but the United States don't care. In fact, it was the Biden administration, Biden himself, who said he saw evidence that UNRWA was connected to October 7th that was later revealed to be completely false. You had Israel that used torture to obtain confessions and their intelligence dossier and lied about it. And despite this lie, Biden said, I saw the evidence with my eyes, in order to justify the defunding of UNRWA. And I maintain to this day, for all the people with Trump derangement syndrome, we are post-duopoly here, that's one of the most evil things any administration has done, knowing that there's a mass famine being committed against Palestinian people, and then you cut aid with UNRWA using lies. It's completely absurd. And the Biden administration constantly using diplomatic immunity. And I'll pass to you, David, and I want you to speak on this. And I want you to rebuke the lie before we get back to the segment where people say, oh, well, there's nothing that Biden can do. Biden and Netanyahu are beefing with each other. Speak on people who make this claim that Biden is completely helpless when it comes to holding Israel accountable. And then we get back to the segment. I'm interested in you chiming on that as well. But before that, you want to take that on?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what happened after Israel killed those World Central Kitchen workers back in April, I
Yeah.
believe it was about 7 West people from Western countries. Israel's been killing aid workers the whole time, but that got a lot more attention because they killed a few guys from the UK and the US, I believe Australia and Poland. And Biden came out and said Israel has to open more aid, border crossings to aid. And Israel did it. And they did it in a very limited way. It seemed like they were playing shell games and kind of lying about when they actually opened it. And not much aid gets through those border crossings, but it goes to show that if Biden wants something out of Israel, he can get it. And that's because the U.S. is giving, they rely on the U.S. for 70% of their weapons and intelligence support and all that stuff. So Biden has the ability to pick up the phone and tell Netanyahu to stop, or, he can completely cut them off. Now, at the same time, there is, certainly things being factored into Netanyahu's calculations right now is the fact that, 7 months away from the November election. And now we're going to have Trump and the Republicans are basically running on, a super pro-Israel platform claiming that Biden's abandoned Israel. So that's certainly factored into his calculations now, because we saw Biden say when Israel launched its invasion of Rafah, he said, he basically drew a fake red line that it's clear wasn't a real red line because of they've escalated so much now in Rafah and he hasn't done anything. But he was threatening to cut off these heavy bomb shipments. But at the same time, you saw even U.S. and Israeli officials were saying, well, IDF has enough bombs for now to bomb Rafah, so it doesn't really make a difference. So, but it is, he certainly has the power to do something here. And it looks like, he came out on Friday with his big ceasefire proposal, but Israel basically just essentially said that they reject it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was very humiliating for the Biden administration. And then they made a big PR push about this ceasefire, and Israel, no, we don't agree with this at all. And what was even more shameful about it was the Biden administration was trying to paint Hamas as the ones who wasn't accepting it as they were selling it. But I want to get back to this segment because we explained how horrific the Biden administration has been. Ali Veshi here, whose days are numbered. At this segment really shocks me, Dave. I would do a lot of these Oppo research on corporate media so I can report here. I watched a lot. I have never seen a segment where they talk about Aaron Bushnell, for example. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen them talk about Lily Greenberg Call, the Jewish official who resigned. And not only did they talk about both, they brought her on the show. And so I want to show this a little bit. You can respond, you can react as well. But I want to show you guys I want to show the audience this insane clip of Ali Veshi literally breaking. This is the first time a lot of liberal viewers are going to get this information. I'm going to say this, but let's continue this. And feel free, and Dave, if you want to chime in on anything, feel free to interrupt. I won't get mad. But if you have anything you want to chime in on, but let's continue this, and then we got a few other topics that we can quickly cover as well.
Smith says after his presentation was canceled, he faced the ultimatum
I'll go back
of resignation.
Just so you guys have context for people who are joining a little bit late. I'll go back about 30 seconds.
Also resigning on Tuesday was Alexander Smith, a contractor for the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID for short. Smith stepped down after his internal presentation on maternal and child mortality among Palestinians was abruptly canceled. In the days before it was canceled, Smith was told to make several redactions, including removing a slide referring to international humanitarian law and deleting any language suggesting recognition of a Palestinian state. Smith says after his presentation was canceled, he faced the ultimatum of resignation or dismissal, and he chose to speak out. In his resignation letter to the agency's head, Samantha Power, Smith expressed frustration with USAID's treatment of Palestinians, writing, quote, "I cannot do my job in an environment in which specific people cannot be acknowledged as fully human, or where gender and human rights principles apply to some, but not to others, depending on their race." And
I was told the Trump administration was the racist administration, Dave.
Yeah, well, this is a really incredible story because he got forced out. And from what I read, he had a good record, positive reviews of his performance working for USAID over the years. And he was forced out because he put together a presentation on the mortality rate of mothers and children in Gaza, a presentation on women and children dying in Gaza. And it, this wasn't going out publicly. This was just a internal USAID conference, and he got forced out for that. So, I mean, it goes to show that even internally, they don't want any sort of attention on these atrocities that the U.S., that they're enabling and funding, essentially.
Yeah. So what Alexander Smith, he committed the gravest sin. He would have produced evidence that would have made Biden and Anthony Blinken complicit with genocide. So I explained this in my hotspot videos, guys. The Biden administration is not dumb. They know exactly what they're doing. You had South Africa in the ICC that said the United States is next. So when Anthony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, all these fucking swamp monsters come out and say, "Oh, there's no evidence of Israel committing war crimes," they have to say that, because if they don't, they directly made themselves complicit. So they had this employee that was like, "Hey man, I got this presentation that would prove that you're guilty of genocide." They looked at him like, "Get out." Then there's no way they would let him print that in hindsight. Any last thoughts, David? Dave, before we continue?
Yeah, well, I mean, the presentation again, like he was commissioned to, he was kind of told to put this together, and that the big thing here is like he wasn't even outright saying, that you're complicit in genocide. He was just putting together a presentation on the mortality rate of Palestinian women and children. I guess that implies that these U.S. officials are complicit in genocide, but just for doing that, he gets fired from his job. He was, basically given the choice between being fired and resigning.
Yeah. And I want to get to at least the part where they get to Lily Greenberg call, and I'm going to let her explain what she's seeing in the Biden administration. We're also going to quickly touch on Biden escalating World War III, sending weapons to Russia. And you guys see the main title of the video with Scott Ritter, the Biden administration limiting his freedom of movement because of he uses large platform to expose the lies of the Biden administration. So that's what we have coming up next. We're getting a little bit more in this video. Dave, feel free to interrupt anytime if you have a thought or anything. I want to show my audience what Lily said herself. I want to at least get that far before we move on. So let's continue.
I cannot do my job in an environment in which specific people cannot be acknowledged as fully human, or where gender and human rights principles apply to some, but not to others, depending on their race, end quote. Two other Biden administration officials who resigned since the war in Gaza began are Lily Greenberg Call and Josh Paul, and they join me today. Greenberg Call, appointed by President Biden to the U.S. Interior Department, cited the president's endorsement of genocide. Paul resigned 10 days after Hamas launched its October 7th attack, becoming the first publicly known resignation. He cited Washington's blind support for Israel. Lily Greenberg Call and Josh Paul both join me now. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being with us. Lily, let me start with you, because if anybody wants to hear it in your words, you've written this out. You've appeared it numerous times in the media, but you've written out in an op-ed why you came to the conclusion you came to. Tell me why you did.
So as an American Jew, I come from communities that are impacted by this war. And I felt that, the president is really using the language of Jewish safety in particular to justify a genocide of Palestinians.
No shit. Now, no, let me be clear. I'm not saying that to her. I'm glad she's saying this. But the amount of Americans who don't acknowledge this is wild. Mm-hmm. Like this anti-Semitism psyop that we have seen, where all these Jewish people pretending that they are unsafe. We have a Catholic that's saying that they're bombing Christians and Muslims in the Holy Land in order to protect Jewish people. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to add, Dave, before we move on?
Yeah, I really like the resignation letter that she wrote, because that was one of the things that she pointed to, was Biden saying, "Oh, if not for Israel, there wouldn't be a safe Jew in the world or something." And it's like, well, what about all the Jews in the U.S.? Like, it's just a completely absurd talking point. And from what I know about her, she used to be kind of like a pro-Israel advocate working in Washington, and to see her resign and say it's genocide, it's a pretty big deal, I think. And I think it goes to show the young American Jews, even if they were raised to be very pro-Israel, a lot of them are turning.
Yeah, she's very much a liberal, guys. She worked on the Biden-Harris campaign. She believes in the Zionist entity. She condemns Hamas. She does the standard liberal stuff. But the reason why I think it's important to mention that is to show you guys how our government is so extreme and so evil. They're not losing the radicals and the revolutionaries. There are people who are institutionalists. They are being turned off the system. She's an institutionalist. She's a Democrat. There are people who was raised following the system, and they was 100% okay with following the system until the unhinged behavior of the Biden administration. I think that worth pointing out. Let's continue the video and move on. Feel free to chime in anytime, Dave.
Where over 35,000 people, 15,000 of them are killed.
Oh shit! I apologize.
Killed, and I could no longer serve at the pleasure of a president who is doing that. And using my community to justify that. And it doesn't make us safer, and it certainly doesn't make Palestinians safe.
But it doesn't. You are aware of the tensions and the idea that there is rising anti-Semitism. You can hold both of these thoughts in your mind.
No, there's not. There's no rise of anti-Semitism. You gotta see. It's crazy that Ali Veshi did this segment, but I told you in the beginning, there's gonna be a lot of shit he's gonna say that's gonna irritate me. You gotta see how he's forced. If you're gonna be on corporate media, you gotta be forced to acknowledge this bullshit. Where the ADL uses pro-Palestinian rallies as evidence of anti-Semitism. I think you wanted to chime in, Dave. Anything you want to chime in on?
Yeah, I would just say that one of the funniest things about this whole anti-Semitism scare is that during the college protests during Passover, there was Passover seders at the encampments. Like all these Jews leading like Passover seders. Like apparently they're saying, Jews weren't safe there. What you have so many, American Jews involved in the protests. Like it's just completely out of touch with reality.
Yeah, let's continue. He's going to do a lot of stuff. He's even going to throw in some Trump derangement central shit in here, if my memory serves correct. But this is an overall good segment, but he's still a sellout. You can see it in the way he presents things. And anyway, you guys see what I mean as I continue.
Doesn't make Palestinians safe.
But it doesn't. You are aware of the tensions and the idea that there is rising anti-Semitism. You can hold both of these thoughts in your mind.
Absolutely. And there is rising anti-Semitism. I'm terrified of that. There's also rising anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia. And we know that those things are happening because of the continued US-backed assault on Palestinians. Jewish safety and Palestinian freedom are not oppositional to each other. And if anything, I don't want to leave my Jewishness at the door when it comes to thinking about Israel. Like it goes against all the Jewish values I was raised with, to kill people, to starve them, to make people refugees. These things are actually counter to what it means to be Jewish. And I know that, and there's plenty of other people within my community that do. According to recent polling that was released this last week, over half of American Jews support Biden's proposal to halt weapons transfers to Israel if there's an invasion of Rafah. There is an invasion of Rafah. There's been multiple strikes with U.S. weapons. That's been confirmed by multiple outlets. Israeli tanks are rolling through central Rafah. Bibi's calling Biden's bluff. And it's time for him to listen to the majority of people within the administration, the majority of the American people, and the majority of American Jews.
Josh, you left early. In the hopes that it would send a real signal, I assume, to the administration to rethink their strategy. Since then, others have left. A criticism has grown about the administration's position on Israel. Talk to me about when you do things like this, when you and Lily do the things you do, you hope for some change and you hope to see that change occur in a timely manner. Have you seen change? Are you seeing something happening now with the administration, or are you still as frustrated as you were when you left?
Well, I left because it was very clear already 10 days into this conflict that the bonds that we were providing to Israel were being used to violate international law. And this has remained.
He said 10 days in, he knew that, Dave. Mm-hmm. As the Biden administration said, we got no evidence. We're doing an investigation.
Yeah, I remember when he resigned, and this whole time he's been pretty hardcore, speaking out against all this. And this is the what you hear from people working in the State Department in USAID is that the overwhelming consensus is like that, it is genocide and that it's horrific what Biden is supporting. And I mean, I think we might see some serious leaks come out. I'm hoping, at least, because that they have the evidence that Israel's committing war crimes. Yeah. So hopefully we see some leaks, so we could, really have the proof, even though obviously, if anybody that can watch a TV or go on social media can see proof of war crimes, but you know what I mean? Like kind of the fact that the U.S. government knows that it is supporting war crimes and abetting war crimes when it claims that it's not.
Bro, wait until the information we get once these people's financial safety is not on the line. Like, there's going to be a lot. Like, these are the most. What I mean by that, these are the bravest among the Biden administration, because they like, fuck the money, I'm out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
there are a lot of people that like got families and shit, bills and shit. They're like, I ain't getting up this job. But then after this is over, when Trump is president,
yeah,
you're gonna see a lot of people that are gonna be telling like all the stuff that Biden did during the genocide. I still believe we only know a fraction of it, like the fraction of how much info they hid, all the horrific stuff that they did behind the scenes. We only got a few whistleblowers, but this information gonna trickle out in mass as like throughout the history, as the years continue. I only want to hear. I'm gonna finish here for him. We're gonna move on. We don't have to watch the whole segment. I'm going to listen to a little bit more, and then we got a few more topics I want to get to. Don't want to take too much of your time, so let's continue here. And then we still have the Scott Ritter segment, which I think I'll do next because that flows into the Russian weapon segment. So that's what's up next. But let's continue the video. There's only a little bit more I want you guys to hear here.
Ever since then, a competition between the facts and the politics. And the experts within government who have resigned, some publicly, some not publicly, the experts in government who continue to push from the inside are on the side of the facts. Unfortunately, the politics have not shifted. But when I resigned, I did so in part because I could not be a part of authorizing the transfers of these arms that have killed so many thousands of innocents, but also because I felt that US support, military support, was an issue worthy of debate. And that debate has not been happening inside of government. So I felt it was important that that debate has happened or happened in society. And there I'm pleased and proud to say that it has indeed, from college campuses to government, been a major topic of debate, and indeed in the international sphere as well.
Lily, let's talk about you were a big supporter of this administration. I don't know whether you still are, but the point is you politically support them. You're a Democrat. There are some who argue that leaving hurts the administration, and that the consequence is that if it strengthens Donald Trump, that's even going to be worse for whatever.
Now, I'm sorry to torture, but this is the part I was waiting to see. You guys see, they are literally dropping bombshells to you, Ali Vecchi, about how the Biden administration is doing the most evil thing we have seen, about lying about genocide and starvation of children. And you guys see his reflex. They almost can't help it. Then maybe he didn't have this plan. Like, dude, are you concerned that this might help Trump? I'll play this whole part now. I want you to respond. We wrap up here. This is the part I want to make sure I want to get to. But let's play this part again. I want you to respond to it.
Still are, but the point is you politically support them. You're a Democrat. There are some who argue that leaving hurts the administration, and that the consequence is that if it strengthens Donald Trump, that's even going to be worse for whatever it is you're concerned about. Tell me how you think this through.
I didn't hear that. Whatever you're concerned about, you just explain it to me. Fuck it.
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, I've been seeing Bernie Sanders, like he came out against Netanyahu coming to address Congress, calling him a war criminal, but I'm sure Sanders is going to be supporting Biden against Trump. So, I mean, it's just not a surprise to see that, there might be a point that Trump might be worse than Biden is right now. But the fact is, when it comes to Gaza, right now, you have Biden actively supporting this genocide of kids in Gaza. And, what could be more important than that right now? Like electoral politics, how does that even register in your brain when you're talking about things like this?
You guys see how the red blue game rots people's brain? They just giving you bombshells on your show, bro. It was up to this point where I was like, man, I can't believe Ali Vecchi is doing this. I was at this point like, bro, I can't believe. Then we got to this point like, oh, there it is. The lecture, like, hey, man, you this whistleblowing shit you doing here, aren't you concerned it's going to help Trump? Fuck getting the information out there. Aren't you concerned it's going to help Trump because Trump is going to be worse on whatever the fuck you're trying to accomplish? I didn't know that the first time I watched this video. I won't play that part again. Like, bro, that's, I don't know. Let's watch it. I think that was so weird for him to say it like that.
Okay. Support them. You're a Democrat. There are some who argue that leaving hurts the administration, and that the consequence is that if it strengthens Donald Trump, that's even going to be worse for whatever it is you're concerned about. Tell me how you think this through.
I'm absolutely terrified of a Trump presidency.
I just wanted to see her response. So she says she's terrified. Yeah.
Which is why I worked on the campaign in 2020. It's why I worked for the administration. And it's why I, for months, and many others have been pushing the president to stop this disastrous policy that is not only killing thousands of Palestinians, but alienating voters here in the United States. It's alienating staff like myself who worked for the president. It's alienating young voters, people. I organized college students in Arizona in 2020. These people, turned out their peers on campus for Biden, volunteers who spent 40 hours a week.
I'm mostly keeping hands off of Lily because what she has done. But I think it's hilarious that you're like, come on, man, stop committing a genocide. You're making it hard for us to campaign for you.
Yeah.
I find it to be hilarious. I still keep my hands off her because I still like what she did. David, you want to respond? And it'd be after you respond, we play the absolute last clip and then we move on. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, it is something like you see all this dissent from within the Democratic Party and like the non-committed votes, the uncommitted votes and all that. And it really, I mean, Biden's just pushing through. Like it just doesn't matter. It's just you support Israel no matter what, and that's that. It's just really unbelievable. I mean, it's believable, but it's just like, I mean, it really goes to show how much control Israel has, the Israel lobby has, just over American politicians.
Yeah, and it'll be the last clip we play and we move on. But at least Lily is consistent with her Trump derangement because I find it hilarious. These liberals, that say Trump is a threat to our democracy. Trump is the greatest threat to our country, but there's one change we could do. We're not going to change our Israel policy, even though that may get that guy in charge. But I think you want to chime in. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's good, like you mentioned before, kind of to see like a typical liberal like this, like coming out this strongly against it. Like it is a good sign that it's not just like people like us and that are really against this thing. It is like establishment liberals who are disgusted by this, but what Biden's been doing.
Yeah. So I want you guys to hear a response, then we move on. We get to the Scott Ritter story, and then I want we can discuss on Russia, Ukraine as well. And then we begin to wrap up here soon. We don't want to take too much more of your time. But I'm actually curious on hearing our answer again. So I'm actually playing in full. It'll be the last clip of this segment, so let's play.
Support them. You're a Democrat. There are some who argue that leaving hurts the administration, and that the consequence is that if it strengthens Donald Trump, that's even going to be worse for whatever it is you're concerned about. Tell me how you think this through.
I'm absolutely terrified of a Trump presidency, which is why I worked on the campaign in 2020. It's why I worked for the administration. And it's why I, for months, and many others have been pushing the president to stop this disastrous policy that is not only killing thousands of Palestinians, but alienating voters here in the United States. It's alienating staff like myself who worked for the president. It's alienating young voters, people. I organized college students in Arizona in 2020. These people, turned out their peers on campus for Biden, volunteers who spent 40 hours a week in the months leading up to the election. And so it's up to the president to prevent another Trump presidency. And he can do that if he actually enforces this deal and stops sending weapons to Israel.
Well, let's talk about that. First of all,
and this is the only thing we differ on. And once again, I'm not dissing Lily or anything, but Biden lost that vote forever. You guys see how their message is, Biden, you can still turn this around. No, Biden led to the starvation of thousands of children. There's no turning it around.
I mean, I think, unfortunately, that there are some people who might be fooled by, like, probably not definitely not everybody who's not voting for Biden because of this, but I'm sure that there are some kind of Democrats, again, like kind of those establishment types who could be fooled by some of these things that Biden's doing, but probably not a significant amount. Like, I think, all these leaks about how Biden is so frustrated with Netanyahu, like if only he could do something. I think that does work on some people, but probably not that many.